We're good and call our meeting to order. So we're here at Public Works Building. We're going to do a budget workshop, and it's like our fourth one. We made some adjustments from last time, so we'll go over those. But Tammy, will you just take a roll real quick?
Mayor Wolf,
Here.
Mr. Adams,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Ms. Hamilton. Here. Mr. Linderman.
Here.
All right. Well, thank you, Mel and Adrian, for updating the budget and getting it back to us. It looks like we're still at a deficit of about $110,000. So we're going to work through that today. There's already been some conversations. We knew pretty much the day after the last meeting that we're at 110. So we've been working on it, and there's some things we've adjusted, and I'm going to have Mel go over. I think, Mel, the first thing I want you to go over before we get into the budget is just point out those items that we talked about: the insurance, accounting costs. I think there's like 5 of them. The legal bond.
Yes, sir.
Repair and details, and then utilities and road street.
Okay. I'll start with the legal fees. You may recall that we had about $77,000 in the regular legal fee line item and another 18 in something called bond counsel fees. In the first category, the $77,000, that includes all the expenses year to date through Mr. McCahill, as well as Sniffen and Spellman. In the bond counsel fees, for some reason, we put all of Timothy Sloan's bills in that slot. Bottom line is, it should not be under the bond counsel slot, it should be up with the others. So this will be something that the auditors will adjust out and take care of that issue.
What does that mean to the budget? Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. The second question you had is what, under development services, what does professional service encompass? And that means that of the $77,760, the planning collaborative is $9,000 of that, and Avicon is $68,000 of that.
Say that again?
Avicon? Yeah.
So people
Yeah,
doing the
it's
study,
Is that
the grant?
That's the FEMA?
Stormwater?
doing the study, yeah.
So is that paid for by FEMA this year?
That's correct. We hope. And next, under general government, under accounting and auditing, we had a budget of $36,640. And that was all Carr, Riggs and Ingram, as well as Moore,
The auditors.
the auditors.
Are you talking now, or that's what we had budgeted for 24? Are you talking about we got 199 spent to date? Is that what we're hearing?
Exactly.
And then we raised that to 90
That is correct.
for this year.
Right.
Go ahead and finish what you're saying.
Right. So what I discovered that we increased the general fund line item from 36 to 90, but we did not increase the water, sanitary, and sewer. So think about that for a minute, and I'll get to the sheet that I had passed out later.
I don't understand what that means.
Is going to change the percentage, like we do with salaries.
If you look at the actuals in your enterprise accounts, there's nothing billed, it's all been billed to general fund.
It's the general government, and you said sewer water, so what am I missing? Because
Water and sewer and sanitation have no expenses taken out at all,
Yes.
okay.
but they should.
Yeah, if you look at like the water expenditures, Tim, on
Yeah,
page
I
20,
did.
yeah, we
I
got the
did.
17.
They did.
That's good, didn't it? So I don't know what the.
Okay, good.
And the other one was, what encompasses general government's other current charges? The answer to that question is, that's where we took out our supervisor of elections expenses. We have a number of line items where instead of paying the actual vendor, we were required to pay Centennial Bank. So there's quite a few Centennial banks in here, but it wasn't money going to Centennial Bank. So that encompasses most of that. Then there was the repairs and maintenance in the general government. And what did that include? That is St. Joe Auto, it includes Bono's for pest control, it includes Kathy's Ace Hardware, it includes Southern Pipe, Dex Imaging for our copy machines. It's just expense after expense that adds up to that $13,000 figure. Then you want to know about what's the detail for the insurance line item for the fire department. And that is simply how it's apportioned, how the auditors did that. In other words, as I look at the trial balance that I printed out, instead of seeing a monthly figure payable to our insurance company, it was monthly prepaid insurance amortization, which means the auditors did apportion it to different departments. In other words, the general fund paid for it all. Now the auditor is saying this fund should have had that much, and this other fund should have had another amount.
Which auditor are you talking about?
Car rigs.
Okay.
I can talk on insurance if you want to do that now, or you want to wait.
Totally up to you.
Well, since you're on the insurance, you were talking about budget-wide, how the insurance looked. So in 2023, the city's insurance policies as a whole was $251,918.01. This year it was $291,313.90, which is an increase of 16% from last year. So I made an assumption that next year will be a 16% increase as well. So if you multiply that 291,313.90 times 16%, I estimated the insurance cost for 2025 will be $337,924.13. If you total all of your budget line items for insurance, we have
337 what? 337?
$337,924.13. And if you total all of the budgeted line items among all funds, including enterprise funds, we have budgeted $335,596, just $2,328 short of that 16%. So I think the insurance numbers are correct throughout the budget.
So Mel, what you're saying is that as the audit's going on, they're categorizing, they're dividing it up as we're going
Right.
through this. So that makes, and hopefully next year, before we start a budget thing, we will have that more.
Right, that's a benefit of having a finance director, is they keep on top of this sort of thing, so there doesn't have to be adjustments at the end of the year.
Okay.
Also, you asked about the utilities and the road and streets. And there was a total of like $37,000 in there that we'd spent year to date. And all of the line items from the detailed trial balance I have all says Duke Energy. And what that means, streetlights. Also, you asked about the law enforcement line item, and it's simply the same amount each month from Bay County of $84,758.92 a month. So that's how that's all added up.
Did we go back?
Okay, any
Anybody in the audience have any questions on any of those that we went through?
Yes. In the different categories, there was insurance at the top, and then you were asking about the insurance at the bottom, which Adrian has explained. So the insurance at the top, is that for the employees? Is that what that is? Okay. Thank you.
So that is not part of the total I came up with, because that is
Correct.
health insurance.
That's all from the bottom. Okay. All right, thank you, Mel. To go on a little further, I want to give you some information, and then we can kind of go forward from there, because we do have a little bit of something we have to look at, that we have to settle before we get to the next numbers, okay? Before we go any further. One of the things we need to address is the police officer, okay? And probably all had conversations with the lieutenant about, you know, what we wanted to do. They want to add another officer, and we didn't have that in the budget. So we're trying to tackle that. I've had some conversation with him individually, and I kind of, my input on it is, and I think I got concurrence from him, is that we'd like to look at maybe doing a half a year, the same as we did a few years ago. We did the same thing. If you look at October, November, December, January, February, not our busiest times, but as we get into April, mid-year for us, would probably be a good time to add them on. So instead of taking a $122,000 hit, we may take a $60,000 hit. So that's my suggestion on that. So with a 110, adding 62, you're looking at about 172. So from there, if you could pull up this page, the one that you got there. And Mel, I'm gonna have you go over that if you would.
Certainly. Well, this morning when I was printing out the detailed trial balances to answer your questions that I just did, I looked at the general fund accounting and audit in particular, and noticed that in fiscal year 24, which is what we're in now, the general fund accounting and audit line item went from 36,640 to this new budget that we're now considering to 90,000. But you'll notice that under the water, sanitary, and sewer line items, those figures, those three figures, did not go up proportionately. So what should have happened is that budget of 129,100 should have been divided among these other departments proportionately. And so you see the one column where I figured out what the percent should be based on fiscal year 24, then applied that to fiscal year 25. And by doing that, that means the general fund will have a decrease of $27,547, and the other three enterprise funds will have an increase accordingly to what you see there. So then we go to the finance director. You may recall the last budget workshop we had, we decided to take the finance director from 50% city clerk, 50% general government, to 100% general government. But on second thought, that salary and benefit should be apportioned like other salaries have been. So in light of the fact that the finance director will take some places of car rigs under the percent on the first section there, that should be the proper apportionment that goes to that salary. So that $75,000 salary should be apportioned to $36,282 in the general fund, $17,000 in water, $2,000 in sanitation, and $19,000 in sewer, which means the general fund will see a decrease of $38,718, and the other three will go up accordingly. Then when it comes to the benefits of the finance director, that $33,640 encompasses the city's portion of the taxes, the health insurance, and of course retirement. So if that's apportioned correctly as the above figures have, then that general fund figure should not be 33,640, it should be 16,274. And the water going up 7,600, sanitary up 1,000, and the sewer up 8,500. So net effect is the general fund will see a decrease of $17,366, and the other enterprise funds will go up those figures. So then below that, I've summarized the effect on the funds from the accounting and audit, the finance director's salary, finance director benefits. So that totals a decrease in the general fund of $83,631, an increase to the water of $37,003, sanitary $5,347, and sewer $41,281. So if you look at the bottom section where it says the current general fund deficit is $110,221, that's a figure that the mayor had alluded to earlier. If we consider those above adjustments and take out the $83,631 from the 110, that means we now have a deficit of $26,590. Today, Adrian and I figured up the ad valorem from the previous year, and Adrian was quick to use his little phone calculator and figured out that in the current fiscal year, we got in 97.1%.
Pretty much 96.97.
And so that's probably where we should feel comfortable of bringing in the coming fiscal year. So the difference of the 97% and the 95% is $87,446. If you add that to our deficit, then we now have a surplus of $60,856.
Almost half enough.
Almost half the cost.
So, with that said, and all those numbers, there's a lot to absorb there, so we'll talk a little bit more about it if we have to. Let's try to settle something out and see what we want to do with an officer. We just need consensus at the table that, do we want to go with a full officer, or do we want to go with a half officer? If we want to go with a half, we have our answer. Any input?
I think that the half makes sense to me, you know, the months they're not as busy.
Me too, on half.
Tim?
I'm just trying to understand this. So we would have during the busy seasons, 2 officers, that would be
No.
results?
We're just saying, you're gonna have a full-time officer after 6 months.
Okay,
You're just hiring them later in the year.
but it's the halves, because we've already done a half? So that'd be
No.
full-time?
All we're doing is, we have a budget that runs from October to September, I'm sorry. So we would just hire that officer for this budget mid-year. And then next year, he'll have the whole year, obviously.
All right, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds good to me.
The only, I mean, I'm definitely for the officer thing, but I do want to just get some clarification on this accounting and auditing again, because,
Can we go back to that, Jason, just so?
well, we have, it's still, I still feel like we're gonna be spending more. You know, when we sat here last week, you know, we spent 199 year-to-date. We had to increase that to 90, because the budget in 24 was 36.
Okay.
I'm glad he found all that. But after we work all these numbers, are we still gonna be short in that accounting department?
For the current year or the coming year?
Well,
You are short no matter what for the current year.
we're no, for the current, we're short. But
Most
and
definitely.
I think the accounting, I said last time, it's gonna work itself out. We won't be using card rigs as much. But we still have a few more audits to get to. I just wanna be realistic, because we had to bump that number up considerably before, and we were still going, "Oh, we're probably not gonna make that." But I'm glad we've got it worked out, like, you know, we've showed it in these other funds, but. So before we go jumping into, you know, I wanna make sure we're more as balanced as we can be.
Yeah, it's our best guess at this point, because when you hire the new finance director, which will be hopefully by the end of this fiscal year, you've got one in place, then they're gonna have a few months to work with Carr Riggs to get them on board, because Adrian can tell you, there's a lot of intricacies about this budget and how you gotta do certain things, so.
Yes, sir.
So the point that they're not gonna be here the entire year, car
Should be like a bell, one should.
No, I hope we get that down. This, I mean, that's too much money, but I'm just trying to be more. But the officer, I mean, it's I'm all on board.
All right, let's jump back to that then. It seems like we have a consensus on the half officer. Is that true? Okay, so we go with that. The next question, I think, is, do we want to deviate from the 95% to the 97%?
It's my first year sitting here. We've always had it at 95, right?
Yeah, and then we've always taken in more than what we budgeted.
That's a standard number, and then 95 is how you prep the budget.
I have done a budget at 97.5 in like 2016 or 17.
So I know the recapitulation went up to 760 million plus.
Right.
It was 759. So is that number solid? Could it possibly change again?
It should not, because that's what came out on the DR 420, and that's
Right.
turned
So
into the
that's,
state and everything.
that's one of the reasons you do 95. The other reason, my understanding is because of defaults.
Delayed collection, yeah.
What is our historical default?
Last year, you saying it's.
You're at 3% that hasn't paid yet this year.
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like 97 would make sense.
And that's where we at now.
And that's where you would be at with that 60,856.
Okay.
You'd probably get 97.05 by doing the full officer.
And to get to 95,
Or the
we
full
had
head,
to cut.
60,856, and your officer.
And
Mm-hmm.
to get it full.
But
This is gonna pay for the half if we do 97.
But if you cut to 95, you have to get rid of
Yeah.
that and the half officer.
Six.
Right, because you lose 87,000 right up top as soon as you go down to 95.
97 good with me. Now, whatever it is, Adrian, you said 96.
It'd probably be 97.1 by the time you do the $2,000 for the half officer that you're off.
All right,
I can figure it out.
we have a consensus 97.1.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have, when we have a consensus on the officer, so based on that, we have a balanced budget.
Yay!
Good deal. All right, any questions from the audience, anybody? Yes, sir.
This is probably for Adrian.
Oh,
Going over the past 3 years, has the ad valorem gone up each year, the total, what we collected?
the total based
Dollar,
on
the total money that we
Yeah.
got in.
Yeah.
And at what rate is that going up?
Very,
So is there, did you have a chance to look at that?
Well, if I'm just looking at the first page of the revenue, I can do some quick math and see.
Well, in 22 it's 2.7, in 23 it's 3.3, in 24 it's 3.6, proposed is 4.1. So
We're hoping to get
in
4.
4 years, it's almost went up a couple million, million three.
And our expenses are falling right along.
Increased rate on pace.
Sounds logical,
Doesn't have to.
kind of like my house.
That was my question. Is, I'm looking, not now, but maybe 3 to 5 years from now, we gotta be careful.
so I actually did that, John.
We're good?
So it has, let's see here, 2022, let me back up. So 2020, it looked like it was 10.9 was our increase in ad valorem. 2021, 10.3, 2022, 3.4, 2023, 23.7.
23.7?
Yeah,
23.7 in,
that was the change from the previous year.
from 22 to 23.
22 to 23.
Right.
This is actually the lowest in the last 3 years.
Yeah, so, you think so?
No, they usually say one was 3 point something. 21 to 22.
That, part of that came from the budget 2 years ago, the briefing.
Yours are jiving with mine.
I didn't make those up, they came from a couple years ago budget table. But anyway, to answer your questions, it has gone up.
But that 1 year you said it was 3 point
It
something.
was only, the difference was only 3.4, but it's been
Right.
averaging
10.
10 to 20 plus. You know, the last, and that's because the house values have gone up.
No, I know.
But if I can, I guess, my opinion on why does our budget keep going up? Please remember that the FEMA money that has paid for many things, the redoing of the sewer, the water lines, the streets, the buildings, that's all coming to an end. And so now we're dependent on our own taxes
Correct.
to maintain those. So I believe that is the trend, and that's what we're gonna see.
I do too. And I think, and if that case, we're gonna have to tighten ourselves a little. We're gonna have to raise taxes. Do you agree, since the FEMA money's going away?
Well, yes, but I also think this year, we've had a lot of purchases because we put off buying equipment and things. And so I don't think we'll need that next year and the year beyond. But until we do a capital improvements plan and see what's really ahead, instead of living year to year, I don't think I can answer that
Right.
accurately. But I don't believe our taxes are gonna go up again.
My concern is that we're considering it, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying.
John, I think we've done
But
everything.
we gotta keep this in our heads that the FEMA money's going, we got equipment to replace, so we have to.
So you're not gonna have a lot of those big projects. The projects are gonna probably be smaller going forward.
Right, but the replacement of equipment, the salaries, the insurance,
There's some
all
of
that costs, they go up. I haven't seen them come down yet.
Yeah, there's uncontrollables. I mean, 16% is what I guessed on insurance. Health insurance, we already know is 12%.
Yeah.
And I think our difference as a whole is 11.12.
Yep.
So we actually are under the percentage increase that our insurance has done, both
Right.
health and property.
And the last thing I'd wanna see is, we have a lower tax rate this year, we come back next year and say, oh, we gotta raise it again. And I think that's why it's looking like 5.75 is probably a good number to go with, just because of that. I'd hope to get lower, but I don't think it's possible.
And keep in mind, property values may also start to drop slightly, and that'll affect your rate as well.
Yeah, this is built on a 5.775. Hey, I can tell you one thing, and I think it's the same consensus at the table, is this budget has been a learning process for all of us, and a good one for future improvements, I believe. I believe that we can make some changes. We can get department heads in charge of their departments and telling us exactly what their budgets are and their numbers and stuff like that. We don't need to, and I don't want to take anything away from the city manager, I've already told you this. It's not that you're taking away from the city manager, it's just that you have to have those department heads know what the heck they're gonna spend in each department. And they need to get together with the city manager and confirm it. And when it comes to us, that's what they're doing. They made deductions the last week when we were here. I believe they're gonna be held accountable for those. They said they were gonna do it, they need to do it. I mean, I'm not gonna enforce it. If there's a question, it's gonna be given to those department heads and the city manager. And I believe they can do it. And the more authority we give them to do it and allow them to be part of the process, the better off we'll be. So I learned a lot, I know, in this process. So, we have a balanced budget, that's a good thing. We're at 5.75. I don't think there's anything else to discuss unless somebody at the table has anything on the budget side.
When are we gonna talk about some of these, doesn't affect this budget, but the purchases that are in the budget, the expenditure for the, I know we're gonna talk about the pier tomorrow, the extension.
Correct.
What about the land purchases and, I think that was 37th Street and
We can
41st
go
Street?
over all that, tomorrow, I mean,
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
that's fine.
You know, the consensus from the last workshop was to take those properties out, so they're out at this point in time.
Yeah, the property purchase is gone, it's not an issue.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, during that, put that on your council, question, and that's one we can bring up and be prepared for. Anything else we need to do here? Anybody? Adrian, you good? Mel?
Great.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Hot dog.
Good job, guys.
I'm going to